Sit down, little princess. This isn't your daddy's jet. The insult cut through the hum of boarding announcements. Lynette Ward, senior flight attendant, 39, polished into cruelty, stood tall in a Navy uniform crisp enough to slice air. Years of serving first-class egos had turned her politeness into performance. She believed in hierarchy, in spotless cabins and silent passengers, and in reminding certain people of their place. Her perfume, sharp with citrus and steel, arrived a second before her voice. Across from her stood Amaya Cole, 10 years old, thin but straight-backed, wearing a yellow cardigan Grandma had knit and sneakers bright as hope. Her brown eyes were wide with both awe and responsibility. Today was her first flight alone, a short hop to see Grandma Ruth Cole in Atlanta. Seat 2A was more than a number. It was proof she could do something all by herself. She held her ticket out carefully. "Excuse me, ma'am. My seat is right here." Lynette's lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Of course it says that. You must have clicked the wrong section when Daddy booked. Happens all the time." Amaya blinked. "No, ma'am. My name's printed. See?" The attendant's gaze flicked to the gold-embossed Coltec Group tag on the luggage. Recognition flared, and resentment followed. "Right," she said flatly. "Billionaire's kid. That explains the attitude." "I don't have an attitude," Amaya whispered. "You do when you argue with me." Lynette's tone softened only enough to sting. "First class is for professionals who need quiet, not storybooks and juice boxes." A businessman in 2B chuckled without looking up from his phone. "You tell her, Lynn." Lynette adjusted her scarf with satisfaction. "I intend to." Passengers nearby lowered their eyes, pretending to scroll screens. The small girl with the braid didn't belong in their reflections. Amaya's fingers tightened around the armrest. "My daddy said the ticket tells the truth." Lynette crouched to eye level, voice syruped in contempt. "Sweetheart, the truth is what I say it is when we're in the air." The cabin door sealed. The engines began to whine. The purser, a tired man who had learned not to interfere, watched the exchange from the galley but said nothing. Lynette straightened. "Fine, stay. But one squeak out of you and you'll spend the rest of this flight somewhere quieter." She walked away, heels striking the aisle like gavel blows. For 20 minutes, peace pretended to exist. Amaya stared out the window, clouds piling like mountains of cotton. She imagined telling Grandma how brave she'd been. Then Lynette returned, tray in hand, smile reset. "Would you like orange juice, Miss Cole?" Amaya nodded timidly. The juice tipped before it reached the cup. Amber liquid splashed across her sweater. "Oh dear," Lynette said, voice dripping sympathy. "Clumsy little thing, aren't we? Let's clean you up." She grasped Amaya's wrist before she could answer. "It's okay, I can—" "Hush," Lynette yanked her from the seat. "Passengers don't like mess." Phones lifted. A man whispered, "Is she—" "Yes," another muttered. "She's dragging the kid." The forward curtain closed behind them. The galley lights buzzed white and cold. Lynette opened the small lavatory door, the smell of disinfectant rushing out. "Since you can't behave properly, you can stay here until landing." Amaya's heart thudded. "I didn't do anything wrong." Exactly what every spoiled child says before they cry. She shoved the girl inside. Metal walls, chemical blue light, the whine of air rushing outside. Then, click! The lock turned from the outside. Amaya pounded once, twice. "Ma'am?" No answer, only the engine's roar. She pressed her forehead against the cool metal, eyes stinging but dry. The toilet flushed automatically, startling her backward. She stared at the swirling water, a cyclone of humiliation. Somewhere beyond the door, Lynette laughed with the purser. Secured her in the forward lav for safety. You know how kids can be. Locked her? He asked softly. Temporary measure. Procedure. Procedure's supposed to protect people, not pride, he murmured. But Lynette didn't hear him. She was already writing the incident note. Minor passenger. Disruptive. Secured per discretion. Inside the blue box, Amaya closed her eyes. Grandma Ruth's voice drifted back like a song through time. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. Joshua 1:9. She whispered it under her breath. Once. Twice. Again until her shaking stopped. The plane bumped through turbulence. She whispered louder. Be strong and courageous. Each repetition built a small wall inside her heart. Not anger, armor. When the wheels finally touched down, the lock clicked again. Lynette's shadow filled the doorway, perfect smile back in place. You may return to your father now, Miss Cole. I hope you learned that attitude doesn't fly. Amaya lifted her chin. Maybe yours shouldn't either. Lynette's smile cracked for half a breath. Amaya stepped past her, dignity intact, sweater stained but spirit unbroken. The jet bridge felt colder than the cabin. Reporters' cameras hadn't arrived yet. Truth traveled slower than lies. But when she saw her father waiting, tall, still, eyes dark with disbelief, the humiliation shrank to a memory and something steadier took its place. He knelt. Amaya? She nodded. I didn't scream, Daddy. I remembered Grandma's verse. Maurice Cole, a self-made black tech billionaire in his early 40s, carries his success with quiet gravity rather than arrogance, glanced past her at the woman in navy, still, pretending authority. Good, he said, because from here on, the only one raising her voice will be me. When cruelty hides behind a uniform, courage must wear the face of a child. Don't blink. What this father does next will ground more than a plane. Don't forget, like, and subscribe to stay with us. The truth is about to take off. The terminal's brightness felt wrong. Too clean, too polite for what had just happened. The world kept moving as if a little girl hadn't been locked inside a metal box 30 minutes earlier. Maurice Cole walked through the gate holding Amaya's hand, his silence heavier than any shouting could have been. Cameras were already waiting, phones lifted, half-curious faces whispering. The words, "disturbance on board," floated through the crowd like perfume. A security officer intercepted them near the arrivals corridor. Sir, we need a quick statement. Routine follow-up. Maurice's jaw tightened. Ask the woman in uniform who just walked past you. The officer hesitated, eyes flicking toward Lynette striding down the opposite side of the gate surrounded by colleagues. Sir, she's been cleared. Captain says you became verbally aggressive. Maurice's expression didn't change. Did he say my daughter was locked in a lavatory for 2 hours? No answer, only the sound of the officer flipping a form. Amaya clung tighter to his sleeve. Daddy, can we go home? He crouched to her level. Yes, baby. But first, we make sure the truth comes with us. By the time they reached baggage claim, the story was already out. Screens at nearby cafes replayed the same headline. Crew de-escalates disturbance caused by billionaire's child. Someone had fed the statement fast, too fast. PR teams had their versions ready before passengers even cleared customs. Alicia, Maurice's assistant, met them near the exit. They're controlling the narrative, she said, breathless. Corporate says a minor passenger became agitated and needed to be temporarily separated for safety. Maurice's jaw clenched. Separated? That's the word they're using. He exhaled, steady but cold. They separated her from her humanity. Amaya stayed quiet, watching suitcases roll by, her small face blank, but her fingers trembling. Ruth's voice came through the phone when Maurice called. "Don't shout, son," she said softly. "People stop listening when you sound like thunder. Build truth slow, like a hymn." He nodded to no one. "We will, Mama." Outside, the reporters had gathered, microphones angled, lights glaring. "Mr. Cole, is it true your daughter was restrained? Did she attack a crew member? Will you press charges?" Maurice raised a hand, firm but calm. "My daughter was locked in a lavatory for sitting where her ticket said she belonged. That's all the statement you get until I have the receipts." He guided Amaya to the car, ignoring the shouts that followed. Entitled "Billionaire." Privilege Tantrum. Inside the vehicle, Amaya's reflection glimmered in the window. Her eyes were wide and tired. "Daddy?" "Yes?" "Did I make everyone mad?" Maurice shook his head. "You made them reveal themselves." The car pulled into traffic, tailed by drones filming through the rain. At home, Ruth was waiting, Bible open on her lap, the kettle already singing. When Amaya stepped through the door, her grandmother rose slowly and gathered her in a hug that smelled like cinnamon and mercy. "You did nothing wrong, my brave girl," Ruth whispered. Amaya finally cried, quiet, shaking sobs that had waited too long. Maurice stood watching them, fists unclenched at last. "Mama," he said, "they're already rewriting the story." "I know," Ruth said, stroking Amaya's hair. "Lies travel on jet fuel. Truth walks." "Then we'll give it legs," he said. Alicia spread documents across the dining table, boarding passes, timestamps, screenshots. "They've posted the cruise version online. Says Amaya became verbally abusive, then resisted instructions." Maurice almost laughed. "She's 10. They included passenger quotes, Alicia added. All anonymous, all suspiciously similar. Words like defiant, entitled, agitated, copy-pasted adjectives. Ruth closed her Bible gently. "That's how they build walls of lies, one small brick of fancy language at a time." Amaya sniffled, eyes red. "Will people believe them?" Maurice sat beside her. "At first, but lies get tired when truth doesn't quit." Later that night, while the house slept, Maurice stood in his study, scrolling through the airline statement again. He read each sentence twice, memorizing the dishonesty like a map he would soon dismantle. A notification blinked on his phone. Unknown sender. From Red Wing Tech. Anonymous. Message. Check seat manifest. 2A assigned 9:12 a.m. to passenger Amaya Cole. Not reassigned. Internal note. Locked lav. Manual override. Someone inside knows. Maurice's eyes hardened. That's the first crack. He sent a copy to Alicia. "Tomorrow we build a chain. No more shouting into wind. Proof speaks louder." He stared out at the night sky. Planes crossed it silently, their lights small and distant. "They think they control the air," he muttered. "But the sky answers to higher rules." Behind him, Ruth appeared at the doorway in her robe, hair silver in the lamplight. "The Lord doesn't miss what man hides," she said. Maurice turned. "Then maybe he sent us a witness." In the morning, news anchors debated class tensions at 30,000 feet. No one mentioned the locked lavatory. No one mentioned a child. But beneath the noise, messages began trickling in. A flight engineer who'd seen door status logs. A crew member whispering about incident pressure. A junior attendant ready to talk. Truth, as Ruth said, was finding its legs. Amaya sat at the breakfast table with her crayons, drawing again. Clouds and sunlight, a small plane above the word courage. Ruth smiled. "That's the same verse that carried you, isn't it?" Amaya nodded. "It helped me breathe." Maurice looked from the drawing to the headlines on his phone, a grim smile pulling at his mouth. "Then we keep breathing. One step, one verse, one fact at a time." Outside, the wind shifted, like the pause between injustice and the storm it summons. Rain hammered the glass like static. The morning after the scandal, Maurice's house felt more like a command center than a home. Screens glowed across the dining table, news tickers, leaked emails, a dozen voices arguing in headlines. Alicia poured coffee and whispered, "They're still spinning it." Every outlet's using the same quote. Crew acted with protocol to protect passenger safety. Maurice didn't look up. Protocol isn't protection when it's punishment. He scrolled through messages, eyes narrowing at one from an unknown sender. The subject line read, "Seat Manifest, Flight 409. Attached was a single image, a digital timestamp showing 2A, passenger Amaya Cole, checked in 9:12 a.m. The leak was small, but in the right hands, it was dynamite. "Where did this come from?" Alicia asked. "Anonymous. But this isn't a screenshot. It's pulled from their internal log." A second email arrived within minutes, this time from Naomi Vega, the journalist who'd once exposed corporate cover-ups before being blacklisted for bias. Her message was short. "Heard about what they did to your daughter. I can help if you've got proof." Maurice typed back, "We've got the start of it. Come see for yourself." By noon, Naomi stood in the doorway, trench coat dripping rain, eyes sharp as truth itself. "I don't need your sympathy," she said by way of introduction. "I need your timestamps." Maurice gestured to the table. "We have the manifest, the boarding passes, and a door log a tech slipped us." Naomi scanned the files. "Door log!" Alicia handed over a printout. "It records every lavatory access. Entry at 10:02. Lock override from outside at 10:03. Unlocked again at 12:24. Naomi's brow furrowed. They locked her in for more than 2 hours. And that override? Only a senior attendant could trigger it. She looked up, fire in her tone. If this checks out, we're not just talking misconduct. We're talking child endangerment and data suppression. Maurice leaned forward. Then we build the clean chain. Every byte verified. No leaks, no emotion, no loopholes. They worked through the afternoon, Naomi guiding the process with a journalist's precision. "Start with chain of custody forms," she instructed. "Every file we touch, we log. If they call this fabrication, timestamps will defend us." Alicia wrote as Henry, the family's tech consultant, hashed each file, creating digital fingerprints that would prove authenticity. Amaya peeked in from the hallway, still in her pajamas. "What's a clean chain?" Maurice smiled faintly. "It means we keep the truth clean, baby. So no one can say we made it dirty." She nodded solemnly. "Then I'll draw it clean too." She sat on the floor, sketching airplanes with colored pencils. The words "fly without fear" appeared in large block letters beneath her drawing. Ruth smiled from the couch. "Looks like our movement just got its name." By evening, the leaks multiplied. A ramp engineer sent Naomi an encrypted message. "Door logs were edited last night. Someone tried to delete them." Naomi exhaled. "That means the airline knows we have something." Maurice rubbed his temples. "Then we move first." Ruth opened her Bible quietly and read aloud, voice steady over the hum of machines. "Let us run with endurance the race that is set before us." Hebrews 12:1. Her eyes met her son's. "Don't sprint with anger, boy. Walk steady with endurance." Naomi glanced up. "She's right. The truth doesn't need rage. It needs rhythm." Maurice nodded, the verse anchoring him. "Then we keep our pace." At 9 p.m., Naomi began recording evidence for an eventual expose. Day 1, seat manifest verified. Lavatory log confirmed tampering. Red Wing system suspected of centralized data editing. Alicia added quietly, "They're using Red Wing for all internal storage. Same system the FAA monitors for safety footage." Maurice turned. "Meaning if we prove tampering there, The whole airline's under review. Naomi smiled grimly. That's not just justice. That's collapse. She looked at Amaya's drawing taped to the wall. Mind if I use that as the headline image? Amaya beamed. Only if you spell it right. Fly without fear? Naomi repeated. Perfect. Before midnight, the first video went live. Not an accusation, not a scream, but a measured presentation. Naomi's voice carried calm authority. Tonight, we begin releasing verified data from Flight 409, evidence that a 10-year-old passenger was unlawfully confined by crew discretion and that official records were later altered. This is an outrage. It's proof. This is the clean chain. The video spread fast. Within an hour, Nawarkwish clean chain trended across social media. Thousands demanded investigation. Other passengers started writing in, telling stories of similar silencing. Filed a complaint, got marked unfounded. Over and over again. At 1 a.m., Naomi closed her laptop and leaned back. It's begun. Maurice stared out the window, where city lights glowed through the mist like watchful eyes. Endurance, he whispered. That's the word now. Behind him, Ruth tucked a blanket around Amaya, who had fallen asleep beside her drawings. She ran her race too, Ruth said softly. Now it's our turn to finish it. Maurice nodded. And when we do, no one will ever lock another child in the dark again. The room fell quiet but alive, the kind of silence that comes right before something unstoppable starts to move. The house breathed like a machine now, wires and screens and whispered prayers all running through one current. Truth. Every surface had become a desk, every quiet moment a strategy. The air smelled of burnt coffee, wet paper, and purpose. Maurice Cole moved through the rooms like a conductor guiding invisible instruments. He wasn't barking orders, he was aligning hearts. Alicia tracked messages, Ruth kept the family fed and anchored, and Naomi sat cross-legged on the floor surrounded by open laptops, her trench coat thrown over a chair, her voice crisp as she dictated notes for the coming expose. Every file has to stand on its own, she said. We don't tell the world what to believe. We show them so clearly they can't unsee it. Henry, their quiet tech ally, was at the far end of the table, his fingers dancing over keys. I've mirrored everything from Red Wing's public directory. Their encryption's strong, but it's nervous. Someone's touching the files even while we're backing them up. Leave them, Maurice said. If they're watching, they'll know we're not bluffing. Ruth smiled faintly from the kitchen doorway. You've learned a strange language, son. Codes and leaks and mirrors. But the spirit's the same. Light chasing darkness. Amaya was on the couch, coloring again, humming under her breath. Her drawing this time showed a plane surrounded by little stars, each one with a name. Truth, faith, courage, endurance. She whispered the words as she drew, not as decoration, but as a promise. Naomi looked up from her screen. Your daughter has better branding instincts than half the ad agencies in this city. Maurice allowed himself a small laugh. She doesn't brand, she believes. The laughter was short-lived. A sharp ping sounded on Henry's laptop. He frowned. They've filed for a digital injunction. If approved, the host will have to freeze our accounts. It's a last-ditch move to stop the upload. Naomi didn't even pause. Then we make the story bigger than the injunction. They can't freeze the world. Alicia swiveled her monitor toward Maurice. We've got everything ready. Manifest, door logs, deleted complaint reports. We just need your voice. Maurice leaned over her shoulder, reading the opening paragraph of Naomi's draft. A child's silence in the dark exposes the system built to hide it. He read it twice, then shook his head. No. Start with something simpler. Something that reminds them who the victim is. Naomi blinked. Like what? Start with her name. She smiled. Always the engineer. You build the bridge before the skyline. Ruth chuckled. He builds bridges out of truth and makes people walk them whether they want to or not. Maurice sat, folded his hands, and spoke slowly, deliberately. We'll call it Operation Clean Chain. Proof unbroken, evidence untouched. This isn't about revenge. It's about record-keeping the way God intended. Nothing missing, nothing twisted. Henry adjusted his glasses. You realize once we publish, they'll come hard. Defamation, breach of privacy, hacking charges. Let them come, Naomi said, voice sharp. Every lie will hit the wall of data we built. The rain began again, tapping softly against the windows. Ruth set down a tray of tea, her voice a gentle anchor. Storms don't choose sides, but truth always comes out cleaner afterward. Maurice looked at his mother, then at his daughter. That's exactly what this is, a storm to clean the sky. Naomi pressed the record button on her camera. Speak it in your own words. Tell them why this matters. He stared into the lens, voice low but strong. Because when you let people lock away a child, you teach the world that cruelty is procedure. Because silence is easy currency in systems built on shame, and because one little girl refused to let fear dictate where she belonged. No theatrics, no rage, just clarity. Naomi stopped the recording. That's it, she said quietly. That's the headline. Amaya lifted her drawing toward him. You sound like you already won. He smiled. Winning's not the goal, baby. Building something that lasts is. Henry hit enter, launching the Clean Chain data archive into the open cloud. The upload bar glowed steady blue. On screen, each file appeared with a green check. Verified, time-stamped, immutable. Naomi began drafting her post. We release at midnight. Just one line in the files. No commentary. People don't need our outrage. They'll bring their own. Alicia was already monitoring the servers. We're leaving 30 minutes. Ruth rested a hand on her son's shoulder. You've done what was right, not what was easy. That's what makes the victory already written. Maurice exhaled slowly. If only right came without cost. It never does, she said softly. But cost is proof you paid attention. When the upload completed, the house fell silent. Even the rain paused as if the air itself was listening. Naomi refreshed the page. The files were public. The world had them now. Messages began to appear instantly, flashing across every device. Is this real? Door logs leaked. Lavlock confirmed. Red Wing database compromised. Naomi closed her eyes, whispering, It's begun. Ruth whispered a prayer of thanks under her breath. Lord, let the truth travel safe. Amaya crawled onto the couch beside her father. Daddy, will they believe me now? They'll have to, he said. The truth doesn't ask permission anymore. The lights flickered, servers humming, phones buzzing nonstop. The storm outside broke fully then, thunder rolling low and long, shaking the walls. Ruth smiled faintly. Feels like heaven applauding. Maurice wrapped his arm around Amaya's shoulder, his voice a soft vow in the storm's rhythm. No one ever locks the truth away twice. And as lightning cracked the sky white, it seemed the world itself was opening, at last, to see what it had tried so hard to hide. The backlash arrived faster than dawn. Screens across the nation lit up with the same headline, the same wording, the same lie. Billionaire manipulates data to defame airline. False logs, fake victim. Different outlets, one script. The empire had found its voice again. Inside the Cole home, the air thinned with disbelief. Alicia scrolled through feeds, her voice tight. They've synchronized it. Every channel, same phrase. Naomi snorted. You can always tell when guilt hires a PR firm. Maurice read aloud from one of the articles. Crew followed safety protocol after disruptive child refused to cooperate. He closed the tablet gently. They're painting obedience as chaos. Ruth looked up from her Bible, calm but unyielding. Lies are just frightened words that can't stand alone. Let them gather. They'll still fall together. Henry burst in from the next room. They're attacking our servers. Thousands of spoofed hits a second. DDoS storm. Alicia frowned. Can we hold? Barely, he said. They're trying to kill the site before the truth finishes loading. Naomi was already typing. Let them try. Every time the site flickers, people will ask why. Curiosity's a better weapon than rage. A knock came at the door. Alicia returned with a white envelope stamped legal notice. The words cease and desist screamed from the header. Naomi flipped through it. They're accusing us of data theft and defamation, demanding we pull down the files. Maurice's tone didn't waver. Truth doesn't answer to threats. Ruth set down her tea. The wicked always send letters before storms. Drink your tea before it gets cold. Amaya, sitting on the couch, was quietly drawing again, a jet slicing through clouds, one wing labeled courage, the other endurance. She looked up. The plane needs both wings to fly. Maurice smiled faintly. You just summed up every revolution in history. Naomi's phone buzzed. Your company's board just voted to freeze your signature authority, she said softly. They're distancing themselves. Maurice nodded once. I built them systems, not spines. He looked around the room, at Ruth's quiet faith, Naomi's fire, Henry's restless focus, Alicia's trembling resolve, and his daughter's steady innocence. They've got headlines and lawyers. We've got truth and witnesses. That's enough. Henry's screen flashed. Wait, new email from the Red Wing Network. He opened it carefully. It's an internal admin log, proof someone tried to access the quarantined data after the FAA freeze. Naomi leaned closer. Who? Henry scrolled. Workstation ID belongs to Harbor Air's VP of Security. Timestamps 24 hours after their public statement. Naomi grinned. That's obstruction. If we verify this, their empire collapses. Maurice exhaled. Then let's make sure it's clean. Ruth whispered, and let's make sure it's righteous. The lights flickered, thunder rolling in the distance. Henry typed faster. They're still trying to poison our DNS, but I'm redirecting the traffic through mirrored hosts. Once the last one's up, we're untouchable. Alicia checked her inbox. We just got another leak. Internal memo from a PR exec. Avoid using the term locked lavatory. Use temporarily separated for safety. Someone inside sent it. Naomi's voice softened. They're breaking from within. Maurice looked at the memo. Fear is finally working for the right side. He turned to Naomi. Post it. Pair the memo with the audio and timestamps. Make their lie stand next to its mirror. Naomi wrote quickly, when truth threatens comfort, comfort changes its vocabulary. She hit publish. Within minutes, the post ignited. Thousands reshared. Pilots, attendants, former employees flooded the comments with their own hidden stories. They told me to delete my report. I saw a passenger humiliated. They called it protocol. Ruth read a few aloud, her voice trembling but steady. These are prayers disguised as confessions, she said. You started a congregation without meaning to. The front gate buzzed. A drone hovered outside, its camera blinking red. Alicia drew the curtains, muttering, They can film the storm, but not the truth. Henry's laptop chimed. Final mirrors online. Every file now exists in 5 countries. Even if they nuke one, 4 remain. Maurice nodded. Good. Then we move from defense to offense. Naomi raised an eyebrow. How? He looked straight at the camera lens on her recorder. By refusing to be angry when they expect it. He hit record and spoke, calm as scripture. A child isn't a disturbance. A uniform isn't authority. And cruelty, no matter how polished, is never procedure. When he finished, Naomi whispered, "That's the sentence we needed." Alicia's screen pinged again, this time a government domain. She clicked it, eyes widening. FAA acknowledgement, Red Wing audit underway, evidence under review. Henry whooped. They're moving faster than expected. Maurice stayed still, only a slow breath betraying emotion. "They heard us," he said. Ruth smiled gently. "Of course they did. Truth's a loud traveler when you let it run free." Amaya climbed into his lap, holding her drawing up high. "Look, Daddy, the sky's clean again." He smiled, brushing a curl from her forehead. "It's getting there, baby. But we keep flying till no one falls." The house fell quiet. Not afraid quiet, but sacred. Outside, the storm softened into rain, washing the city clean. Naomi closed her laptop, the glow of the screens painting her face gold. "We're not safe," she said, "but we're seen." Maurice met her gaze. "Being seen is the start of justice." Ruth lifted her teacup. "Then to being seen," she said, "and to staying steady when the sky shakes." They drank in silence while the world outside refreshed its feed, realizing the story had changed again, and this time no headline could rewrite what had already taken flight. The room held its breath as Henry's voice broke the silence. "Node isolated," he said quietly. "Red Wing is under full quarantine. No edits, no deletions." On his screen, a single amber bar blinked, the digital equivalent of a locked door. Across the bottom, bold white text read, "Custody, FAA ethics, records verified." Naomi leaned closer, eyes narrowing with relief that looked almost like disbelief. "It's done?" "It's done," Henry confirmed. The host accepted the petition. Every bite they tried to hide is frozen in the light. Ruth set down a cup of tea beside the keyboard, as though the truth itself might need warmth. "Glory doesn't shout," she murmured. "Sometimes it just holds still." Maurice stared at the screen, the faint reflection of that amber light flickering across his face. "For the first time," he said, "the evidence is safer than the lie." Naomi nodded. Then we moved to the reveal. No one raised their voice. No one hurried. Each of them worked with the careful stillness of people preparing something sacred. Henry cued 3 clips, the pre-lavatory audio, the door override log, and the FAA custody confirmation. Alicia drafted the caption in silence. Naomi reviewed every word as though a single syllable might fracture the truth. Ruth whispered a verse over them, not to dramatize, but to bless the work. "Let us run with endurance the race that is set before us." Hebrews 12:1. The air seemed to settle. Naomi clicked upload. First came the sound. "Put her in there till she learns respect," a voice said on the grainy recording. Then the numbers. The lavatory door override log showing lock true, 02/21/16. Finally, the amber custody stamp, regulatory possession verified. No narration, no anger, only truth, clean and bare. The post went live. The silence afterward was heavier than thunder. Within minutes, messages began to surge across every screen. "Is this real? This can't be policy. Someone help that. Child." The hashtags returned. Mersh, clean chain. Fly without fear, not as slogans, but as sentences. At airports across the country, departure boards blinked. Flights delayed, flights suspended. Every major airline halted for operational review. Naomi stared at the feeds. "They grounded themselves," she whispered. Alicia's phone rang. "FAA just confirmed public inquiry," she said. "They want full disclosure hearings within 48 hours. Maurice exhaled, the sound half prayer, half-release. Then the sky finally heard her. Televisions filled a silence outside their walls. Commentators stumbled through updates. Executives avoided cameras. In one broadcast, a spokesman clung to the phrase context and discretion until it cracked under repetition. Ruth shook her head. They can't even say the word locked. That's how shame sounds when it tries to stay professional. Henry turned from his monitor. The mirrors are holding. They tried to take down the files but were duplicated in 6 countries. Every time they delete, 3 copies wake up somewhere else. Naomi smiled without softness. That's what happens when you build truth like a network. It learns to survive. Maurice stepped outside for air. The street was strangely quiet, no aircraft carving lines across the sky. Even the traffic seemed subdued. For the first time in months, the city sounded human. He whispered to no one, "Stillness isn't silence. It's the sound of accountability arriving." Inside, Ruth gathered Amaya into her arms. The little girl held her sketchbook open to the page she'd drawn days earlier, the airplane with 2 wings labeled courage and endurance. "See, Grandma?" she said softly. It worked. Ruth kissed her forehead. The Lord made sure the world could finally see what courage looks like at 10 years old. Maurice returned, his coat damp with the first drizzle of evening. "FAA hearing confirmed for tomorrow," he said. "Open to the press." Naomi looked up. "Public?" "Fully," he replied. "They're bringing us in as witnesses." Alicia smiled for the first time in days. They wanted silence. They're getting sunlight instead. They gathered in the living room as the rain thickened outside. Naomi arranged her notes. Henry watched the data dashboards pulse with steady light. Ruth lit a small candle and set it near the window. "This is for the ones who weren't filmed," she said. "For the passengers who swallowed their truth and kept flying anyway." Maurice placed a hand on her shoulder. "Tomorrow's for them, too." He sat beside Amaya, who was coloring a new drawing. The same plane, but this time with hundreds of windows, each one glowing yellow. "What's this?" he asked. "Everybody gets a seat," she said. "No one has to stand anymore." He smiled. "That's what we're fighting for." Naomi's phone buzzed again. Read the message aloud. "Harbor Air releases statement. We will cooperate fully with regulators and have suspended executives pending investigation." Henry laughed softly. Translation, "We're sinking and we know it." Ruth chuckled. "Better they sink than drag the innocent down." Maurice glanced at the TV, where anchors repeated the story with the reverence of people who finally understood its scale. "The Clean Chain Initiative," one said, "has exposed systemic manipulation of passenger incident data. For the first time, every airline in the country faces an independent audit." Amaya clapped. "That means we won, right?" Her father smiled gently. "No, baby. It means we started something that can't be stopped." Later, as the storm tapered into quiet rain, Naomi went live one last time before the hearing. She faced the camera, her expression stripped of exhaustion and pride alike. "The evidence is now in federal custody. Operations are suspended. The hearing is public. The Cole family isn't asking for revenge. They're asking for reform. From now on, no company will own the narrative when the truth belongs to everyone." She ended the stream and shut the laptop. "It's theirs now," she said softly. Maurice nodded. "That's where it should be." Ruth opened her Bible to the page she'd marked for the day of victory, but she didn't read aloud. She simply touched the verse with one finger. The gesture enough. Amaya leaned against her father's arm. "Daddy?" "Yes, sweetheart." "Can I fly again someday?" He smiled at her question, both heavy and pure. "One day soon, and when you do, the sky will be cleaner because you helped wash it." She yawned, her eyelids drooping. "Then I'll draw a new one." one that never closes its doors. Ruth whispered, "That's the sky God meant us to have." The rain stopped. From the porch, they could see the faint orange streak of morning pushing through the clouds. For the first time, the quiet felt earned. Maurice closed his eyes. The weight of months, humiliation, rage, endurance, finally slid from his shoulders. He whispered, "Let the hearing come. We're ready." Behind him, Naomi watched the first sunlight hit the amber symbol on Henry's screen. Custody, verified, glowing like an answered prayer. And as the last drops of rain evaporated off the street, the city seemed to exhale. The kind of exhale that means the storm did its job. The hearing chamber shimmered with light, bright, merciless, honest. Cameras lined the walls. Rows of officials sat behind long desks stacked with files, each stamped custody verified. At the center table sat Maurice Cole, posture calm, but coiled with purpose. On one side, Naomi Vega prepared her evidence. On the other, Alicia sorted files into perfect lines. Behind them, Ruth Cole held her Bible closed in her lap like an anchor, and beside her, Amaya, small, feet dangling, stared straight ahead without fear. The chair tapped the microphone. "This session will determine the validity of the clean chain evidence and the responsibility of Harbor Air." Naomi rose first. "Exhibit A." She pressed a button. The room filled with a voice. "Put her in there till she learns respect." The sound was flat, undeniable. No dramatics, no music, just proof. Then came the second screen. The lavatory door log, cold lines of data showing lock true, RO2-21-16. The third, the FAA custody confirmation, the amber mark that meant truth now belonged to the public. Murmurs rippled. The chair's voice stayed level. "Defense, you may respond." Lynette Ward, the flight attendant, stood in uniform, hands trembling. "I acted for safety," she said, voice hollow. The cabin was unsettled. "I made a judgment call." Maurice looked up, steady. "You made a decision about who deserved dignity," Lynette swallowed. "It wasn't about race. It was about power," Naomi said quietly. "And you used it on a child." The chair's gavel tapped once. "Ms. Ward, the data confirms you manually locked that door. Do you contest it?" Her lips parted, then closed. "No." Naomi faced the panel. "This isn't one woman's error. It's a culture that calls cruelty procedure." The chair nodded. "Continue." Naomi displayed the internal memo instructing staff to use temporarily separated for safety instead of locked. "This is the script of shame," she said. Language turned into armor. The chair turned to Maurice. "Your petition seeks systemic reform, not damages?" "Yes," he said. "We don't need punishment. We need protection for the next passenger, for the next girl too polite to scream." He took a breath. "Our proposals: automatic release of unedited incident files to passengers and regulators, independent ethics oversight, whistleblower protection, 10-year retention of all safety-related footage, no more deleting dignity." Ruth whispered, "Amen." Too soft for the record, but not for the moment. A panelist leaned forward. "And you call this the clean chain?" "It's not just policy," Maurice replied. "It's faith made verifiable." The chair folded her hands. "Noted." She looked at Lynette. "Do you wish to add anything?" For the first time, the woman looked at Amaya instead of the floor. "I was wrong," she said simply. "I knew it when I heard the lock click." Amaya didn't flinch. "Don't do it again." The words landed heavier than any gavel. The airline's executive council rose with polished composure. "We regret what occurred, but we must consider the environment." Naomi cut him off by projecting the time-stamped attempt to access the quarantined node after the freeze order. "This is your environment," she said, "tampering with federal custody." The counsel froze. The chair's pen scratched across the paper. "Thank you, Ms. Vega." Silence swelled. The chair finally spoke. "This panel finds sufficient evidence of data manipulation, misconduct, and bias. Harbor Air's senior leadership is suspended pending further review. The Clean Chain Initiative is adopted sector-wide, effective immediately." Applause was not permitted, but it happened anyway. Soft, reverent, unstoppable. Ruth closed her eyes. "Thank you, Lord," she whispered. The chair turned to Amaya. "Young lady, do you wish to say anything before adjournment?" Amaya's voice was small but clear. "I just wanted to go see Grandma." The room exhaled all at once. The gavel struck. Hearing adjourned. Outside, sunlight felt like a verdict. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. "Mr. Cole, will you sue the airline?" He shook his head. "Lawsuits fix balance sheets. Truth fixes systems." "What should people remember?" "That a 10-year-old girl stayed in her seat," he said, "and the sky learned her name." The crowd parted for them as they walked down the marble steps. Not celebrities, but witnesses. Signs waved. "We all deserve 2A. But Clean Chain, that's to fly without fear." Amaya tugged her father's sleeve. "Can we go home now?" "Yes," he said, smiling for the first time in weeks. "We already brought the sky home." The house that night was still, the kind of quiet that follows storm and sermon. Ruth brewed tea. Naomi typed the official summary. Henry verified every file was still mirrored. Alicia fielded calls from news outlets and answered only one. "Truth is public. Check the custody logs." Amaya sat on the floor drawing again. This time, not a plane, but a door opening to sunlight. On the threshold, she drew two stick figures, one tall, one small, both holding hands. Maurice watched her. "What's that?" "It's us leaving the dark," she said. He nodded, eyes warm. "Looks about right." Naomi uploaded the final statement, a single paragraph without headline or music. "A door locked in the air has opened the sky on the ground. Clean Chain enacted. Dignity verified." Within hours, the clip was everywhere. For once, virality didn't cheapen it. It spread like restoration. At midnight, a courier arrived with a plain box. Inside was a silver model plane with Clean Chain, FAA edition engraved on its wings, no note enclosed. Amaya held it to her chest. "Now everyone can fly right," Ruth smiled. "Even the ones who forgot how." Maurice looked through the window where the night sky stretched, empty of noise, full of stars. "Justice isn't loud," he said. "It just keeps breathing." He turned to his family. "Tomorrow we rest, then we build." Naomi raised her cup. "To truth that learned how to travel." Ruth added softly, "And to mercy that followed behind it." Amaya placed the model beside her drawing. "Now the plane and the star are friends." Maurice laughed quietly. "That's what the world needed all along." Outside, a single aircraft traced a clean contrail across the dawn, white, thin, unbroken. For the first time, its sound felt like peace, not power. And in that simple stretch of sky, the story that began in humiliation ended in harmony. Proof that courage can ground an empire and still teach it to fly. The morning came soft and clear, as if the sky itself wanted to apologize. No headlines screamed anymore. They whispered. The chaos had quieted into understanding. Maurice stood on the porch of his home, mug in hand, watching a single contrail fade across the horizon. The house behind him smelled of tea and sunlight. Inside, Ruth hummed a hymn as she watered her plants, and Naomi sat at the kitchen table, answering messages from reporters who, for once, weren't chasing scandal. They were thanking her for the truth. Amaya was on the floor, cutting paper planes from yesterday's newspaper. "Daddy," she said, "these words don't hurt anymore." Maurice smiled. That's because they learned your name. The news anchor's voice played softly from the TV. The Clean Chain Initiative has been formally adopted across the aviation industry. Passenger incident footage will now be public record under federal protection. Alicia turned down the volume. You realize, Maurice, your daughter changed the law. He shook his head. No, she just held her seat. The law changed to catch up. Ruth joined them, her Bible open to a familiar page. She read quietly, the verse that had carried them from humiliation to healing. Thanks be to God who gives us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ. 1 Corinthians 15:57. When she finished, she smiled at her granddaughter. Victory doesn't always roar, baby. Sometimes it just breathes. Outside, the world moved normally again. Flights resumed, gates reopened, passengers boarded. But somewhere deep in every cockpit, a quiet awareness had taken root. The system had learned that power without empathy was just noise. Naomi stepped onto the porch, her trench coat replaced by peace. How's it feel? She asked Maurice. Knowing the sky finally answers to decency? He looked out at the vast blue expanse. Feels lighter, he said. Like we washed something we didn't own but still had to fix. Amaya ran out, holding the silver model plane the FAA had sent her. Its wings gleamed in the morning light. She lifted it high. This one flies for everyone, Ruth laughed. Just keep it pointed toward heaven. Maurice bent down beside her. Remember, Amaya, it's not the seat that makes you belong. It's your courage to stay in it. She nodded solemnly, clutching the plane to her chest. Then I'll never move again unless it's to help someone else. The porch went quiet. Only the sound of wind in the oak tree filled the space. The same wind that had once carried lies, now carrying peace. Maurice looked to the sky one last time. After everything they took apart, he said softly, God still gave us something that flies. And for a moment, the world seemed to hold still, suspended between forgiveness and flight. If you've ever been silenced, doubted, or told to move when you belonged, remember Amaya's story. Dignity doesn't shout. It endures. She didn't fight with noise or anger. She fought by staying still, by letting faith, courage, and truth do what time couldn't hide. Have you ever faced injustice and chosen calm over rage and still won? Share your story below. Someone reading might need your strength today. And if this story moved you, like, share, and subscribe to Dignity Voices for more real-life cinematic stories of perseverance, justice, and faith.